Hey there friends, Stephen Petaski here from the Luxus Group. Thank you very much for being here today. It's a pretty cool one today because we're doing a destination spotlight. We're actually talking about buying and selling real estate in Italy. We're going to be more specific around the Tuscany region, but I'll give a general overview of buying real estate in Italy and what that can mean to you. And of course, it's always better shooting these destination highlights when you're in the country that you're talking about. And I am in fact in Tuscany right now, so feeling very inspired and excited to share with you more about our experience in acquiring real estate and managing and living here part-time or vacation renting in this amazing part of the world. It really is that special. The reality is many people, many of you, maybe have had a dream of owning a piece of real estate in Italy. There's something very special that we build in our minds about this incredible country. And wouldn't it be nice to have a home in the countryside in rural Tuscany? Or wouldn't it be nice to have an apartment in Florence? There's just so many unique ways to own real estate here. And so I'm going to talk a bit about that today, give you the rundown. But what holds people back generally from pursuing their dreams like this is fear of the unknown, not understanding what it's like to potentially own, to manage. Can I get a mortgage? How does it all work? Can I rent it, nightly rent it? So today's mission is to give you some tools to knock down some of those barriers that could be the result of you not moving forward with your dream. Ultimately, this whole show was created specifically to give you tools so that you can make better decisions around buying and selling real estate and helping to take away the fear of doing it. We want you to not just do it for the purpose of lifestyle and have a great personal experience, but also to make money when you can. That's obviously amazing in real estate. Real estate has had a lifelong trajectory of always appreciating. Obviously, there's dips and valleys along the way through economic cycles, but real estate is a great hold. In particular, I like to think it's a good hold here in a recession as well, or slower times. But again, it's to each their own, to make their own decision. This isn't about selling you anything. This is really about giving you tools so you can make your own informed decision about what's best for you and your family. Now, before we get started, as always, I ask for only one thing if you're watching this episode, is please to share it with a friend or a family member. If you find any one of the previous shows interesting, you can think of a friend, maybe it's your dentist or your brother-in-law or your parents. You're like, I think my parents could be interested in hearing about buying real estate in Italy. I have one ask, I want you to do it. You can even pause right now and do it right now, I'd appreciate it, is to share this with someone. Share it with someone and ask them to subscribe. We're trying to get the word out, so the more views, the more subscriptions, the more we can ultimately share these important tools with so many people. We have no horse in the game on this, so there's nothing here to sell you. There's no revenue in for us. This is purely our mission to help people by sharing our knowledge and our experience of doing this for the past 15 years. So the first thing you have to do when you're evaluating buying into a market is what you're looking for. Now, Italy's pretty unique because you have so many different options. I'll give you an example. If you're going to buy in, let's say, Hawaii, you're not really generally looking for a city property or a upcountry ranch. For the most part, you're looking for a beach resort property. It's pretty specific. If I'm buying in Scottsdale, Arizona, generally I'm looking to buy in a golf course community. I'm looking to buy in a place where there's centralized amenities and it's a gated community and I have a golf course and access to that stuff. In Italy, it's a lot more broad. Are you looking for an apartment in one of the cities, such as Florence or Rome or Venice? Am I looking for a country farmhouse where I can acquire something and live in the rural countryside? Am I looking for a restoration project? Am I looking for a fractional? Am I looking for a farm? There's incredible tax breaks if you acquire a farm that's producing, supporting agriculture. Am I looking for some form of agriturismo, which is another version of operating a farm but in a tourism standpoint? Am I looking for a casa vacanza, which is effectively a farmhouse that you can rent nightly? So there's lots of different things to look at. We're looking for the coast because a lot of people want interior, but they also have incredible spots on the coast. Southern coast, northern coast, lots of different places. Some people will have something in their mind that they're thinking about. They're thinking southern Italy, I can see the ocean, or they're thinking Tuscany, or they're thinking one of the cities. But some people just say, I would love to own in Italy. So you have to kind of take that big general approach and start to drill it down into what you think you're going to enjoy more. And if you don't know that, the best thing to do is always to come here. Go to the destination you're looking to buy in. I've always recommended that. All my shows I've talked about this, is if you don't come to the spot, come and live. Come spend a month, spend a couple weeks. Rent a place in Tuscany, rent a place in Florence, rent a place in Rome, Amalfi Coast, Puglia, wherever. And then you'll get a better understanding of what's important to you before you pull the multi-six-figure or seven-figure trigger to acquire something in this very special place. Now, I won't be able to talk about all those areas Southern Italy, to be perfectly honest, south of Rome, I don't have a good understanding of. I know the Amalfi Coast and I know the Puglia area, but I don't know it that well, so I'm not going to talk about it today. I'd love to be able to know it, so down the road I can share with you more about its spectacular views, spectacular places, just not for today. I'm also not going to talk about northern Italy, call it like Bologna, Milano, Turin, because it's a different spot, and generally speaking, that's more the industry part of Italy. Not to say you wouldn't want to own real estate there, because it has its own unique special flair, but it's not a spot that I'm an expert in and able to give any real advice. I'm going to talk more about central Italy, so call it between Rome and Florence. That's kind of the gap, and really going to spend some time talking about Tuscany, and that's where we have real experience. We've done a lot of work and we know a lot about, so we'll dive right into that. Let's talk about some general things about buying real estate in Italy first. Now, it's a Western country, very welcoming to foreigners, good systems for acquiring real estate here. They have an incredible real estate recording system that goes back hundreds of years. I mean, their system, when we've acquired some properties, we can go back to 10th, 12th, 15th, 18th century, doesn't matter, and they know who's acquired that real estate during that length of time. It's quite phenomenal. When you think about the system that has existed longer than the countries that we have been occupied, it's really quite wild. It's really quite wild to even think about. So in any event, very, very good systems around that. One unique thing they do here is they don't use escrows like we use in the United States, or lawyers like they use in Canada. They use notaries here. Notaries effectively form the balance of all of these situations. These notaries in US, we would look at that as just being a relatively, someone that looks to kind of approve signatures. Here they're effectively lawyers. And so they're the ones that draft the documents, that connect the buyer and seller, that make it official, and that notary gets, those documents get recorded, and you are the person now entitled going forward. So unlike certain countries where there's squatters' rights and different things along those lines that could make it tricky, is that real estate, who's it really owned by, is very clear here. They've done a good job with managing that, and so when you do acquire something, you know that you're acquiring it with clean title, and there's a process to search for that, and that's what notaries are for, and to ensure that what you're acquiring is in fact going to be yours without issues from someone who 300 years before that owned it claims a right against it. So just want to put your mind at ease around that, but there is a unique process, and I can't get into all the minutiae of that right now because it took us a long time to really understand the complexities of it, but in fact it's almost just as easy as North America, just a slightly different system of doing it. As I mentioned before, there's lots of different options for Italy. So I'm actually right now at a place called Club Borgo di Valle, and I'm actually going to shoot a video on this that will be posted at a later date that you can check out, and this is a fractional offering. There are limited in the amount of fractional offerings, but there are a few. There are some ultra luxury ones as well, Castello di Casale, and then there's, so I believe one in Florence as well. So there are some limited fractional offerings / private residence clubs, PRCs. There's an episode we'll kind of flash up on the screen here if you want to go back and learn a bit about the different styles of real estate you can own. Watch that video, super helpful, super informative, as it goes through the whole spectrum of everything from, effectively renting houses and timeshares all the way to home ownership. And I reference these things called PRCs or destination clubs. It's worth checking out. So anyway, I just want to point you back to that if you have a chance to watch it. So with the wide offering here, whether it's whole ownership, apartments, fractional, private residence clubs, you have to kind of drill down what you're looking for. I'm going to give you the general region of Tuscany because it's some place that we know very well. I'm in Tuscany right now, and that's about all we have time for today. So Tuscany forms actually quite a large area. If you think about kind of the northern part, roughly Florence, it goes over to the coast and it goes south to about where we are today here in Cortona. We're just right on the border of Umbria, where it looks very similar to Tuscany. It effectively looks like a landlocked Tuscany. It's right in the middle. But what makes Tuscany so darn special are the laws. They're the laws that have prevented overdevelopment, and they preserve their history. And I would suggest better than any other place in Italy, potentially any other place in Europe, by preserving the vistas, preserving the authenticity, preserving all the important aspects that have been historically significant over thousands of years in this particular area. And how do they do that? They do that by not allowing development outside of the cities. So I'm going to explain this in different episodes, or another episode. But the short version is, when you're within a city, they have strict rules about the color of your building, what it can look like, how it conforms. But it is possible to kind of build with relative ease, nothing's easy here, relative ease in the cities. If you're going into the Tuscan countryside, that's a whole different game. What I'm looking at right now, this is a 14th century hamlet. It's not like the architect here found a beautiful place on the hill and thought, wouldn't this be great to build and replicate a version of a 14th century hamlet. This is a 14th century hamlet that people lived in for hundreds and hundreds of years, and then was ultimately acquired once it was abandoned as a ruin and created into a private residence club. One important part of our business is actually restoring ruins across central Tuscany, mostly in the Siena to Montalcino area, where you acquire ruins and you restore them to become private estates for families. So why do I share this? Because when people come to Italy, you see Italy's beautiful everywhere. There's, some places are more beautiful than others, but when you drive, you're like, wow, it's so beautiful. What makes it different than Tuscany? Tuscany has prevented people from replicating these projects at scale across the countryside. And that's why you have these vista preservation laws and these perfect views everywhere. Because unless you are a farmer or you're restoring a ruin, you cannot construct anything outside of some very specific guidelines in central Tuscany, or in Tuscany in general. So what does that mean? So if I buy all this land around me, I own 10,000 hectares of land, I can't build a shed to house my tractor without a permit. And I can't build a shed to house my tractor unless I'm actually a farmer. So that's how complicated it is. Otherwise, this over hundreds of years, in particularly the last 70 years when agriculture has become so significant here in Italy, it'd be dotted the landscape with farms everywhere and random houses and wood construction and brick and different things. They haven't allowed that here. I share this with you why it's so important, because it's what's kept Tuscany so pure, but it's also what's keeping the values up. People buy in Tuscany because of that, because of not seeing the landscape dotted with a bunch of random buildings because someone owned land there and they were allowed to do it. To the point, if you take a ruin and you start it to restore it without the permission and the proper permits in place, it's actually illegal and you can be arrested. And so that's how serious they take it here. And as a result, if you're looking at Tuscany, you're thinking about buying here, it's going to be more expensive than a place like Umbria or others, but the value preservation, I believe, is significant because of that history they've worked so hard to maintain over the years and the very tight restrictions they have in place, which are only getting tighter as it goes on. Certain areas now, they're called communes, but effectively the regions are blocking people's ability to build pools because they think they're ugly. So think about that. All the things they're preventing from development, all it is creating the finite amount of ruins that are remaining and increasing their price. So I really believe from a value perspective and an investment perspective, Tuscany is probably the safest bet in Italy. Again, there's obviously lots of micro regions and sub-markets that are going to be very successful and do very well over the years. When I just generalize Tuscany, that particular one piece of news and that one fact is probably the most important, because when you buy something here, you don't have to worry about 300 yards down the road that someone's going to construct a yellow brick house, because it's illegal and they're not allowed to do it. So you can rest assured when you buy, that view that you have as preserved, barring the only one chance that can happen is a farmer acquiring land and allowed to build a shed. But there's such strict rules around that as well. Generally speaking, you're going to be in great shape. Now within Tuscany itself, there are different subregions. You've got more mountains, you've got more valleys, you have rolling hills, you have forests, you have wineries, lots of different places to look at buying real estate. Now one of our favorite parts of Tuscany is this triangle that's between Siena, Montalcino, and Montepulciano. There's a triangle there that has a number of different regions in it, but between Siena and Montalcino is a really important agricultural area and wine region called the Crete Senese and Valorcia, and they're really, really stunning. That is the quintessential Tuscan rolling hills and cypress-lined driveways and hilltop farmhouses. And you go a little further east over the mountains, you have Pienza, Troconda, Montepulciano, and all these beautiful, amazing towns that really, you'll see more mountains, and you move over to the valley that I'm looking over right now, which is in the Cortona Valley. And the Cortona Valley is a bit different. That's where you have the autostrad that comes up and connects through to Siena and Florence. But when you get to the other side of the valley, you have Cortona itself, the mountains, and then it borders Umbria. So those are kind of the areas that we'd be looking at or shopping for real estate around here. And again, within those areas, you have all these sub-pockets. So you got these little cities. Most people when they come here, they are thinking generally about a farmhouse that they can acquire. And a farmhouse is it's called a podere in Italian. But when we are thinking of a farmhouse, when we see it online, we think of a villa because villa something. And that's something we see when we're on VRBO or Airbnb Lux or whatever as a place to rent, a luxury place to rent. Even though it says villa, 99 times out of 100, it's actually a farmhouse. There are some villas here, but they're few and far between. As you can think about hundreds of years ago, one villa on a property or one castle on a major estate, and then a few villas, and then hundreds of farmhouses. So when you see villa, actually think farmhouse or podere is generally what it means when you're looking at it from a rental perspective. The neat thing about the farmhouses is that you can acquire one. There's a couple of different ways. Agriturismo, effectively it's like a farmhouse that is can be rentable for tourism purposes, or casa vacanza, and that's the the ability to nightly rent. So a lot of times when people buy resale properties, they may not have a casa vacanza license attached to it. It's super important if you have intentions to rent to determine if they have a casa vacanza, and if they don't, ask why from the seller. Because the casa vacanza, certain luxury agencies will be fine for you to list it without a casa vacanza, but effectively it's like their short-term rental permit. But what it is that the region evaluates your home to ensure it meets certain safety guidelines to allow to promote it, and that's things around safety around the pool, safety around staircases, how the property is built. So there's some regulation and conformity to ensure that homes that are renting are doing so in a safe and sustainable manner. Many that you see online do not have casa vacanza licenses. They just rent it independently, and there's not a lot of enforcement around it, so it's okay. But the really good luxury agencies do require a casa vacanza license. So if you're thinking of acquiring it, don't just take the seller's word for it to be like, oh no, it's fine, you can rent it out. You want to have this casa vacanza. And I believe some of the biggest ones out there, and as more regulation and more enforcement comes, it's going to be a requirement. So it's a really critical aspect to ensure you have it, and if they don't have it, then you can get it. And getting it's not an easy process. It's going to likely involve you investing some money into the property to ensure it meets the very strict standards of a casa vacanza. The other alternative is restoring a property. This gets expensive though, but it's amazing. It really is one of the most special journeys you could go on, and if you have the resources for it, whether by yourself or pooled with some friends, restoring a property is very special. I am shooting another video on this later that will come at a later date, because we actually have a division in Tuscany that's specifically dedicated to restoring farmhouses in rural Tuscany. It's something I'm very, very proud of. Every time we do it, we get to preserve just a little piece of Tuscan history, which for us, just so much pride and so much joy, and we work with such amazing people here every single day, from our partners here in the ground to the contractors to our staff that manage the properties for the clients after the fact. So again, not enough time today to give you all the details, but watch for that episode. It'll be about restoring ruins in Tuscany, and it's a part of the Luxus Group that we are, again, incredibly proud of and would love to share with you. So thanks for indulging me on that one. But it is an option. It is an option to restore properties big and small. Now the reality is, because there's a finite amount of ruins that are available within Tuscany, because you think about a ruin comes from 100 to 1,000 years ago, and every ruin out there is either crumbling, or it's being lived in a little bit, or it's already been restored. So you have to, if you're going to restore something, you have to acquire it and you have to restore it. So that's a process in itself. There's lots of companies that do it. We have a very special, unique way we do ours, so it's not a fit for everyone, but it's quite a luxury through authenticity approach, where we invest heavily into the preservation of the authenticity of that particular asset, and but we do it in a luxury way. So we wouldn't be a fit for everyone to restore property, but there's lots of good contractors around here that could help. You bring a property to life that fits your specific needs. So definitely a unique option. If you do that option, you can build in the requirements for the casa vacanza right at the outset. So that is a unique way to do it. Usually you'd be talking out, 2 million euros plus in that process. The luxury stuff gets into 5 to 10 million euros. Anything less than that, you're likely buying something that's already existing, 500,000 to 1.5 million euros. That's, it's already partially restored, and you go in and invest into it to make some improvements to it. Maybe you improve the pool or the garden or some of the aesthetics or the furniture within the house. And there's lots of those. You'll see if you go online, look at Engel and Volkers, Knight Frank. Those are two very popular agencies that represent Europe and Italy. Sotheby's certainly has it as well. You can go online and see lots of places for sale. This is an important part of buying real estate, though. And again, we're thinking specifically on rural Tuscan real estate. So think of farmhouses. Is they all look awesome. They all look great when you see them online. There's the lights shining up the building. There is, the outside brick and this restored product. They probably have a pool. And then you'll see these huge price gaps. One will look the same. That will say 13 bedrooms for 1.2 million euros, and then it'll be a 4-bedroom for 5.6 million euros. And you're going to be, what is the difference? Like, how could the price gap be that? It looks amazing from the outside. Again, too much to explain on this. This is something we could help you with. Ping us, and I'll give you more of the details personally about what the differences are. But the big reasons is that in the manner in which it was restored, there's ways to do it very cheaply and very inexpensively, and unfortunately it's not a good product. Just at the end of the day, you can build things cheaply in North America as well. You can restore things cheaply in Italy. So that's number one. Number two, and generally the biggest factor, is the location. What is it actually looking at? Is it in a valley, on a hilltop, on the side of a hill, next to a city, next to a pig farm, next to a solar field, next to industry? Most of the time, people look at these and say, that looks basically the same. Why is that property near, let's say, Pisa or Lucca, half the price as a property in Valdorcia? Well, Valdorcia is a UNESCO site. It's one of the most preserved pieces of all of Italy. So it may look like the exact same property, but instead of looking at maybe a highway and in an Amazon building, you're looking at, of course, perfectly preserved Tuscan hilltops and unbelievable rolling hills and mountains that never will be an Amazon or a highway being built through there. So, like anything in real estate, location, location, location. That if you're really thinking about preserving the value of your asset and your investment, acquiring a piece of real estate in an area that's going to be preserved, in particular in a place like Tuscany, is going to drive your return substantially over the long run, both as it relates to capital appreciation, but also in your ability to rent it, because people don't want to look at a highway when they're staying for their luxury vacation, whether it's a honeymoon or a cycling trip or whatever it may be. They want to be in a place they're looking at perfection. They want to be looking at the perfect Tuscan postcard, which is why you see these huge gaps in pricing when you look online, when they all look the same generally. As with any destination, you got to use a great broker. I did reference some there, but please connect with us. We know the people on the ground. Like anywhere else, there's good brokers, but there's good ones, or say great ones rather, that represent their specific areas. They're very specific sub-regions within a region of an area that really understands the market very well. And if you just pick one online that says, TuscanyRealEstate.com, and they say, oh, I'll take you anywhere in Tuscany, it's impossible for them to be that educated and informed on every deal that's off market and on market and where the sales are by going from Cortona to Lucca. It's just impossible. Even though on a map it looks like a relatively small region, it is substantial and there's just too much there. So we try to find and we'll target you with a broker with a specific area that you're really looking at, whether it is the Cretenese, or it's Chianti, or it is San Gimignano, wherever it may be. You want to find a broker in that specific area, and it doesn't always mean that it's the same brokerage. We found in situations that certain brokerages have great representation with their agents in certain of these subregions, and then other subregions, they don't have great representation. So allow us the work to find you the right agent in the right area, because I promise I'll make your life easier to take you through and walk you through the process. Because it's very important what the right person can explain to you how it works, because there are some things that are different here. For example, quite often on commissions, brokers make money on both sides of the deal. They charge the buyer for targeting a property, and they charge the seller, anywhere from 4 to 6% each. So I know it's 10 to 12% total commission that can be. But as a buyer, I'm generally not used to paying an agent to find me a property, but that is standard here. So instead of being shocked about some of these unique facts of buying real estate in Italy, give us a call, we can explain more about it. In addition, financing in Italy is extremely difficult. Getting a mortgage is almost impossible. We've done it with our business through kind of commercial loans. The individual residential loans is next to impossible, but not totally impossible, just very, very difficult. Reason being is that Italians don't use mortgages the same way we use them in North America. We use them to refinance, to take equity out of our home so we can invest into other things. In Italy, they just buy with cash. And owning your home outright is just part of the process you're brought up and part of the way the economy was built and part of the way people buy real estate. So when you go to an agent and say, oh, I want to, how much financing can I get, 70% loan to value on this? The agent will be like, they'll be like, no, you need to pay cash. You get your own loan. They're not going to make it subject to financing here. This doesn't work. Ability potentially to acquire it and then refinance it after, but again, very difficult. Banks are not comfortable with you extracting equity out of a deal at the time of acquisition just to pull the money out. They actually ask you what you're doing with that money. So it's very, very difficult. I would expect just to organize your own financing in your home country and come being prepared. So get like a home equity line of credit or some form of financing back at home. So you come here to buy with cash. I'd also make the negotiations way easier because sellers are often very antsy, knowing how difficult it is to get a mortgage, about accepting a deal conditioned upon that financing. So that is a really important aspect about it. Again, not impossible. We've done it a couple times. But I would say we put hundreds of hours of work into identifying the bank and touring them around, getting the appraisals and getting it all done. So I just find it would be easier just to get it from your home country if possible. Or if you're a cash buyer, then you're in good shape already. Now that covers off most things about buying real estate in Italy. Just give you some of those high level points. Of course, you can buy within these cities as well. You're buying within a city, you're not buying a farmhouse, you're buying an apartment. Very small, 60 to 150 square meters. And when we say square meters, that's the language they use here in the metric system. But just think about it timesing by 10. That's usually the easiest average. It's not quite an exact science. You can use, of course, your phone to do the quick conversion. But 60 meters would be like 600 square feet, to kind of give you a sense. 1,000 meters is going to be 10,000 square feet. So it'll give you a sense of what you're looking at, but you'll look and be aware you're going to see meters and you're going to be confused about actually how big that property is. And but the apartments within these towns, whether it's Venice, I'm going to shoot a video on Venice as well, Rome, Florence, with the big cities. Venice isn't a big city, but I call it well-known cities. Then you do have like Siena, which is really great, Montepulciano. There is some regulation in Italy around short-term rentals, and generally it is quite allowed, but more enforcement is coming. Florence and Venice, during COVID, came up with a plan that they want to start to regulate and limit the amount of VRBOs. I call VRBOs short-term rentals, STRs, that are allowed, either the quantity of them total or how many nights you can rent it. They're trying to prevent investors coming in and buying an entire apartment block and effectively turning it into a hotel. I've referenced this many times in the past, and you can actually go back to another video, how Airbnb effectively changed short-term rentals. So that'll pop up on the screen, give you good history on that. Italy is a little behind on determining the regulation and enforcement around it, but is so heavily reliant on tourism, they have to regulate it, and then they'll have to enforce it, because someone's going to buy an entire town of Pienza over the course of the next 30 years. It's going to be one giant hotel. And that's not good for the locals. That's not good for the town. There has to be some limitations around it. So expect more regulation. And if you're looking to buy in those cities where there's a higher degree of risk of the regulation due to the scale that people are buying homes there for short-term rentals, again, you need a great broker, and there could be some risk involved. Because you may buy something, within 5 years the rules could change. So I would not invest overly into the cities for that specific purpose. If you're looking to do it to acquire property, and let's say Siena, and to rent it out part-time to create some revenue and offset costs, great. But if you're an investor looking to buy a property or buy 10 properties and rent them out, I would look elsewhere, because there is some risk that could be regulated to the point you'd be limited on your ability, and then it may be harder to sell your properties if you don't have the ability to rent them out consistently. So that's some of the interesting stuff coming around at regulation for STRs within the Tuscany area. We're keeping a close eye on, and certainly we'll report on as change happens. There you go, friends. That's buying, selling real estate in Tuscany. I hope they give you a really good indication of how things work around here. It's a lot of information, kind of like drinking from the fire hose, but hopefully I gave you a good indication of what you can do here. Again, because it's so foreign to people, contact us. We can connect you with a great broker, put you in touch with the various options here, and hopefully you can pursue your path and dream of owning a piece of history here in this remarkable place in the world. Thank you very much. Share the show, like and subscribe. It means a great deal to me. Catch you soon. Ciao.